The Canon EOS R5 Mark II is expected to be announced in February of 2024. But how much do we really know about it? Will it have a stacked sensor, a resolution of 62 megapixels, dual image processors, dual CF Express Type B card slots, and a full-size HDMI port? Well, stick around after this short message for what we know and what's likely. But first, subscribe to this channel for a chance to win a Canon EOS R5. I'll be giving one away to one lucky subscriber once this channel reaches 100,000 subscribers. Anyone above the age of 18 with a valid mailing address is eligible. Additional terms and conditions are linked in the description down below. It started on November the 25th, 2022. We had a detailed set of leaked specifications for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II to start off Black Friday. Canon rumors said that the information came from a known source and would sport a 61 megapixel sensor and have dual DigicX image processors. The frame rate would go up to 30 frames per second from 20 frames per second electronic and also have a mechanical shutter. And video would be improved up to 8K 60 frames per second. But there were some red flags. The same resolution as the Sony a7 R5, pushing video and stills, but with 2 image processors. That actually takes more effort, more resources, and makes it more costly than just putting in a single image processor. And we know that the Canon EOS R1 is going to get a new image processor. We don't know the details behind that, but as Canon took that image processor from the 1DX Mark III back, going back to 2020, the DigicX image processor, and they put it in every single camera with the exception of the R100. So it's most likely that Canon's going to do the same thing here. They're going to take the same image processor, a single chip from the Canon EOS R1, and put that in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. And then of course there's having dual CF Express Type B card slots, even when the more expensive Canon EOS R3, which came out for $6,000, only got one. And as it turned out, the announcement date for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II was supposed to be the second quarter of 2023. Well, we certainly blew past that date. We blew past Q3, and here we are with 1 month left in Q4, and we don't have the Canon EOS R5 Mark II announcement. But that didn't stop the rumors. They just changed a little bit. In September, the Camera Insider provided us with a detailed set of specifications that reportedly come from an internal sales meeting from a large retailer. But again, confirmation of these specifications aren't possible at this time. I was told we could expect more information in the coming days and weeks. And by taking a look at the specifications here, we can see a lot of similarities with what Canon rumors put out on November the 25th. Once again, we see a stacked sensor, but this time the resolution gets a boost to 62 megapixels. And instead of dual image processors, we get a brand new DigicX X2S. And while we do get a boost in video up to 8K 60 frames per second, there's no information about continuous stills shooting. And as far as 8K 60 frames per second, it certainly makes an awful lot of sense. After all, the Nikon Z8 was announced in May and it has 8K up to 60 frames per second. But dual CF Express card slots, dual CF Express Type B, yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. The Canon EOS R3 has a single CF Express Type B card slot, and that was announced for a price of, well, $6,000. And even today, $1,000 off, Black Friday sale still on, Cyber Monday sale still on, it's still being priced at around $5,000. And the Nikon Z8, a direct competitor to the Canon EOS R5, it also doesn't have dual CF Express card slots, along with a new battery based on the same form factor as the LPE6NH, and of course eye-controlled autofocus from the Canon EOS R3. It seems like a very solid forecast. A forecast, not necessarily leaked specifications, as the Camera Insider says that confirmation of these specifications aren't possible at this time. I was told we could expect more information in the coming days and weeks. We didn't have to wait too long for confirmation. Well, at least confirmation on some of the specifications. On October the 4th, the Camera Insider said that specific dealers have been told that February will bring a major camera announcement, which is the same month as CP Plus in Japan. And while this could be an announcement of the Canon EOS R1, the Camera Insider specifically calls out the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. Now, we are supposed to get 2 announcements in the first quarter. The first announcement, the Canon EOS R1, that's supposed to be a slow tease, not necessarily an official all-out announcement. It could be a development announcement, or maybe Canon Australia could tease and say something like, the King is back, with a picture, but no other specifications. But a few weeks later, Canon Rumors confirms that the Canon EOS R5 Mark II is expected to be announced in early 2024. The logical time they forecast would be ahead of CP Plus in February. And that's a date that we have forecast for some time now. And while Canon Rumors didn't validate previous specs, they did say, we've been told that Canon plans to push the Canon EOS R5 Mark II back to the top of its segment, spec-wise, for both stills and video features. One source has claimed that the Canon EOS R5 Mark II will up its 8K frame rate to 60 frames per second in RAW. Neither Canon Rumors or the Camera Insider or any of our sources have been able to validate any of the information from either of these posts going back to November the 25th last year, or the specifications that we got later in this year from both the Camera Insider and Canon Rumors, indicating that this camera is supposed to have a stacked sensor, 60, 61, 62 megapixels, even 45 megapixels. And I think what's safe to forecast at this point is that the Canon EOS R5 is definitely going to have a stacked sensor. But whether it's going to be around 45 or 50 megapixels or push all the way up to 62 megapixels, we just don't know at this point. Now, Canon could say, okay, you know what, for this segment to topple the Sony a7 R5, we need to go 62 megapixels or 61 megapixels. But I think just having a stacked sensor alone, improving low light performance, dynamic range, and better color rendition in those low light shooting scenarios, I think that alone would make the R5 a worthy upgrade. Now, whether it's going to get dual CF Express card slots, that's another story. I'm not really expecting it. I would really love it to have dual CF Express Type B card slots. But at this point, I just don't expect it. Not with the R3 only getting a single card slot, the Nikon Z8 getting a single card slot. From a competition-wise and from their own lineup, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's one of those things that would push somebody to go to the Canon EOS R1 over the Canon EOS R5. Now, in terms of still shooting rates, we definitely think that 30 frames per second electronic is plausible. I mean, we can see 40 frames per second in the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. Although it does have 24 megapixels, we definitely see the possibility of raising that to around 30 frames per second on the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. And as far as a launch window of CP Plus or February of 2024, that's also plausible as well. We also expect Canon to start a slow teaser and leak process of the Canon EOS R1. Not so much a leak, but they're going to a controlled marketing announcement of the Canon EOS R1 starting probably sometime around the second week of January, all the way up to when they make their final announcement. And they did something very similar with the Canon EOS R5 back in 2020. We had Canon doing a development announcement sometime in February, followed by about 3 or 4 weeks later, Canon Australia came out and said the King is back on a Facebook page. And then at NAB 2020, that's when we had Canon confirming a lot of things, such as, yes, it can do 8K, up to 30 frames per second RAW, with IBIS, with autofocus, uncropped. And while that seems pretty good and standard today, back in 2020, a Canon camera going up to 8K, RAW, and doing that uncropped, and doing that with phase detect autofocus, with IBIS, it just seemed like an impossibility for Canon to leapfrog the competition the way they did. And what I'm really excited about with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II is that it doesn't appear that Canon's slowing down in terms of their innovation, and that the Canon EOS R5 Mark II will indeed be an opportunity for Canon to push the camera back to the top of its segment, spec-wise, for both stills and video features. Not leapfrogging the competition by a huge margin like they did back in 2020, but nonetheless beating out the Nikon Z8 as well as the Sony a7 R5. Those are goals that I certainly think make sense. After all, both cameras have been out for about a year, and Canon's been working on the Canon EOS R5 Mark II for the better part of 4 years. And they had a pretty good base to work with. And if you're looking at purchasing any camera gear, any lenses or accessories with Cyber Monday deals still on, you can still buy the Canon EOS R5 for $2,999. So if you're kind of on the fence, waiting for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, but also thinking of getting the Canon EOS R5 Mark I, today, still here at the end of 2023, I've been shooting with the Canon EOS R5 for many years, and this is the best price I've ever seen, and most likely the best price we're going to see for about 6 to 12 months. So $2,999 for a brand new unit, not a refurbed. We did see some refurb models going for about $21.99. It's a really good opportunity to pick it up. You can pick it up at B&H, Adorama, or Amazon.com. And if you want to use my affiliate links down below, it really does help this channel grow, because the proceeds from any purchase you make on there really does help fund this channel and allows me to get new gear such as the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, the Canon EOS R1, the 200 to 800 millimeter, and who knows what other lenses might be coming out in 2024 to justify the purchase there as well. Maybe the 35 millimeter f1.2, or is it going to be an f1.4? Or what about some super telephoto zooms or some other primes? It's really hard to say. I'm really looking forward to 2024. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to get some leaked specifications on not only the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, but the Canon EOS R1 as we move into December. After all, Black Friday is done and over with, and that lets things settle down a little bit. People are getting ready for Christmas, but leaked specifications, there's no reason why we won't get some leaked specifications between now and, of course, December the 20th, and maybe even after Christmas. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.